Thanks for joining us. Sometimes other founders ask me, what is it like to have you on our board? And I say, you're tremendously helpful. You saw the promise in Sourcegraph early on. And also that sometimes it feels like you can get your own personal all-in podcast with David on just the things that matter to your own company. So that's my best selling point for you. So thanks for all of your support here at Sourcegraph so far.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk about what you are seeing going on in the market and what you think is going to happen in the future with AI today, especially as it relates to SaaS companies. Mm-hmm. So, SaaS companies, they're either workflow companies or systems of record. Both of them seem to have huge potential to apply AI. So how are you seeing that right now?
Yeah, I mean, we're still just in the early stages of this, but I think it's a really exciting new technology wave. The history of Silicon Valley is these major waves that sort of stack on top of each other. And so, first you had obviously the internet. I mean, there's things even before that, but the internet in the late 90s is when I started getting involved. You kind of had Web 1.0. And then, in the sort of early 2000s, you started having new waves. You had social, and then you had, cloud and mobile, and they just kept unlocking new possibilities for startups to build on top of. And it's generally the case that startups do need a new wave to build on. This is sort of the why now question that VCs always ask, is why is your innovation now possible when it wasn't before? And as these waves get more mature, the good ideas start getting eaten up. And so you at some point you do need a new wave to come along to kind of unleash the potential of new startups. And that's what it seems like right now, is that again, the big waves previously were cloud, social, and mobile. And we've been kind of waiting for what the next one was going to be. I think there were a couple of, possibilities that maybe were pretenders, I think crypto was and is very interesting, but it's sort of in its own category. It's not something that, I think it's like really applicable to decentralized finance. I'm not sure it's like broadly applicable to business software.
Yeah.
And then you kind of had Web3, which is sort of crypto, but no one can quite understand what it means if it's not crypto or DeFi. So it's been a while since we had one of these waves, and now it seems like AI is that big wave. And sometimes I'm pretty skeptical of these things, but in this case, I'm actually pretty bullish because I've seen just early demos of the capabilities, and it seems very real to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing. If you go back to some of the other waves you mentioned, like cloud and mobile and social, you were running companies during a lot of those, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
Was it the same feeling that everything has changed?
Yeah, I mean, so I think what happens is that people recognize it at different speeds. And because in the early days, the adoption is still, it's still growing. And I think part of why, VCs or Silicon Valley as a whole are always accused of being lemmings is because when something really promising comes along, they always want to be the first to embrace it. That's kind of their jobs. And sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. But on the whole, it's a good thing, right? Because it means that when something genuinely promising comes along, a lot of resources get thrown at it. And you want that. That's the magic of Silicon Valley. And, people outside the industry are always making fun of the fact that most of these things don't work out, but that's not really the point. I mean, the point is that some of these things work out spectacularly well. So
it's okay if you're a VC and you predict 10 of the last 5 waves. Right. That's still okay.
Well, you really don't want to miss the big one, basically, obviously it's better not to invest in a false hope, but it's pretty important not to miss when the big wave does come along. And so, mobile, I remember, was was a pretty big deal. I mean, but even with mobile, it took a couple of years for everyone to realize how big a deal it was going to be, because I mean, you remember, I mean, there was a clear moment, which was the iPhone moment, right? Where Steve Jobs basically debuts the new iPhone. And, the early adopters could see how transformative and powerful it was, but Apple's market share was tiny at the time. So like
Yeah.
people were still using Blackberries and whatever. And so like in the first couple of years of mobile, there was a genuine debate among like forward thinking people who got it. It's like, should we be building on iPhone or not? Because I mean, there are still hardly any users of it. And so you really have to be skating to where you thought the puck was going to go if you're going to build on it. Eventually, everybody could see once the market share numbers got there, like once there were, whatever, hundreds of millions of iPhone users, then it became obvious you should build for iOS and then Android. But in the early days, there was kind of this debate between, well, we see the potential, but is there enough of like a user base to build for? And
Yeah.
nobody asked us. And that happens a lot in the early days.
Yeah. So you were CEO of VMware during some of these trends, during
Mhm.
mobile and cloud. How was it being CEO during these and having to deal with the doubters, the haters, and also this feeling that if you don't shift the company, then you're gonna be left in the dust?
Yeah, I mean, so I think we did some things right and some things wrong. I think the thing that we did right was that we were all in on cloud, or let's say that for us, that meant multi-tenant SaaS from the beginning, meaning that, and I think things have changed in this particular respect, because now you have, thanks to technologies like Docker and Kubernetes, you can actually deploy, self-hosted or on-prem versions, and it makes sense. But back, this would be like in, 2008, 2009, we basically went for a fully, again, multi-tenant SaaS, fully SaaS model. And it was really hard in the early days, because the number one objection that we got from prospects was not about our product. They wanted our product, but they were like, just burn it on a disk and give it to us. And we're like, sorry, we don't do that. We're only delivered through web. And so the biggest objection we had to the product wasn't even about us. It was just about the safety of the cloud. And you don't hear that as much anymore, meaning that I think cloud delivered software is viable in a way in which it just like, there are, I think now, companies that do want the self-hosted version, but nobody just like out of hand rejects, cloud.
Yeah.
And that really was like the big objection we faced. And we stuck to our guns and again, decided that this is where the puck was going. And we ended up being right about that. On mobile, we realized pretty early on that we needed to build mobile versions of our product. And specifically for, iOS and then Android. I would say that the mistake that we made was that mobile was one of about 5 major product initiatives that we were doing at that time. Again, this is like the 2009 to 2012 timeframe. And in hindsight, we probably should have had even more urgency around it. And instead of making it one of 5, we should have just, or I should have, as the CEO, just said that, like, guys, drop everything. We're not doing anything else until we get mobile right.
Yeah.
And
What could you have looked at back then to have made that decision to go all in on mobile?
just again, like there's no data that's going to give it to you. Maybe you could look at like the adoption curve of the iPhone, but it's more about just like knowing, again, skating to where the puck is going and knowing, and I think that you can't fully rely on data in these situations. I mean, that's one of the things about startups that's really important, is because if you wait until the data makes a decision irrefutable, if you wait till the writing is already on the wall, then like you've missed it, because everyone else who was a believer started working on it 2 years before you, and they're like way ahead of you. So this, a lot of this game is about understanding where the technology is going and where it wants to go, and not waiting for the adoption cycle to fully prove it out,
Yeah.
and so you have to kind of be willing to take those chances.
One of the things you said that I found really interesting is that CEOs have a lot more agency than they think, especially at tech companies.
Yeah.
And I imagine somewhere deep in your bones, you felt that mobile was the future, but maybe, back then you felt you didn't have the agency to push the company in that direction. Is that fair?
Well, I don't think it was an agency problem. I think it was just there were lots of other really pressing things to work on. So, for example, we had like by that point we had a large sales team that had a list of features they needed to close the next big deal. We, we needed to expand the capabilities of our core product, and at that time, it was mostly being consumed on the web.
Yeah.
So
So
I think
both of those things are
Mhm.
true of a lot of companies right now that have zero AI in their products, where the CEO and a lot of engineers are saying, this is amazing.
Right.
And so if companies are to go and infuse AI into their products, they're going to need to bulldoze those things. What would you advise a CEO in that kind of position to do?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. So the common denominator here is there is a lot of inertia in companies, even startups.
Yeah.
And one thing I've been amazed by is how early in a startup's life the innovator's dilemma kind of kicks in, where, this is supposed to this is a Clayton Christensen theory that the reason why big companies miss innovation is because they're afraid it's going to cannibalize their core product. So they don't want to do it because like they've got some a mature product that's spitting off billions of dollars, and the last thing they want to do is like undermine that and cannibalize that. But the tragedy is that if they don't do it, someone else will do it. They're going to eat their lunch. So the thing I've seen that's pretty amazing with startups is just that very early on, innovator's dilemma kicks in, or you could call it the problem of legacy, which is you have all of these plans and priorities that get set, and people don't want to change them because, for good reasons, like you don't want to thrash the team. I mean, if you're constantly changing the priorities, then the team goes crazy because you're thrashing.
Yeah.
So, or you set like a budget that you prepared for the board back in December, and now it's like April and you realize something different, but you somehow feel beholden to that old plan or whatever. And I just think that legacy is just like death for startups. I think you have to be willing to pivot on a dime and be willing to change in light of new realities, new realizations. Because the big advantage that a startup has over that giant company is that you're not bound by, you shouldn't be bound by that innovator's dilemma. I mean, that big company has something to protect, right? They've got that $1 billion cash cow product that they're trying to protect. Startups usually don't have anything to protect. I mean, the default state for a startup is to run out of money and die. So I always say that like startup founders should be all in on their best idea.
Yeah.
Don't compromise on that. And if that means changing the product roadmap from what you said it was going to be a month ago, like change it, so yeah, and that's what I mean by agency. You as the founder have the power, or the agency to change almost anything in your company that you don't like. And what I hear from founders is all these like reasons, or like frankly excuses for why they
What other
can't
kind
do
of
that.
reasons do you hear?
Well, it's like you hear this a lot around like headcount reductions, right? No one wants to do headcount reductions because it's unpleasant. But it was like, well, if we do this, then we'll get bad PR, or you don't hear that anymore because like every company's doing it. So it's not, but that was like a real thing is,
Yeah.
okay, if we do a headcount reduction, we won't be the hot company anymore. No one will want to come work here. Um, or I mean, so like perceptual reasons can be like, I think a big mistake is people are just worrying too much about what people outside the company are going to think, or it's just the inertia behind all of the current initiatives inside the company, or again trying to please a board which is like super misguided because the board should just be your partner. They're not, like we always say, like, as a VC that sits on founder boards, we're not like your judge. We're not, you know what I mean? We're here to be your partner. Like,
Yeah.
let's figure out the biggest problems together. Like, if, you tell me, you missed the plan or need to change the plan, it's like, okay, like, why did that happen? Let's figure this out together. It's not like, oh, you bad founder, it's like, that's not what we're there to do.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about AI is it seems like if you're a SaaS company, AI helps you solve the same problems for customers even better. So even if they're
Mhm.
not asking for it today, you can bet that every single day within your customers, some other competitor is coming up and pitching them a solution that does what you're doing, but way smoother and faster, and that they would be open to AI. Another blocker I see though is, I've heard from some people who say, well, no company is ever going to be comfortable sending their data, to some AI model and having it be used in some AI model. And, to be clear, a lot of AI models don't actually do that. But that feels to
Right.
me like back in 2008, if you were to say, oh, the cloud violates every big company's IT policy, it's never going to be adopted.
These things always get worked out if the value is there. I mean, security is always an issue, but again, it gets figured out. The question is whether the capabilities are there to deliver the value that justifies figuring it out. And in my view, the value always wins. So yeah, I mean, just back to AI, I think AI is going to be a lot like mobile, in the sense that there's a whole bunch of there were a whole bunch of pre-mobile SaaS companies, and when mobile came along, they either made the adaptation and like it turbocharged their business, or they couldn't figure it out and they fell by the wayside. And I think AI is going to be a lot like that, where you either figure it out and it turbocharges the business because you're able to just do so much more for customers, or you don't figure it out and then somebody else does and then you're left behind. So I think it's critical. And the reason I say that is not because of the hype, but just because of the demos that I've seen. I've seen so many cool demos of products already where people are incorporating AI, and like, it's amazing. I mean, it's like what customers can do with your product just gets so much better. You can deliver so much more value. And so we're right now, we're just talking about like the application layer, companies that may not be AI companies per se, but rather using APIs from, OpenAI or Anthropic, or, there's a whole bunch of these companies now that have sprouted up to provide the capabilities of large language models to applications. So
Yeah.
just at the application layer, there's so much cool stuff you can do that I kind of think if you're not thinking about that and how to incorporate those capabilities, your product's just going to be less compelling than somebody else's.
Yeah. So, final question. I think consumers have already won and will win from AI. But if you look at the landscape of companies out there, who gets more power? Who wins because of AI? Is it the big companies, the small companies, US companies? What do you think?
It's really hard to know, like, where the value capture is going to be. So at this early stage, what I would say is that probably there'll be, to some degree, all the above. I mean, if you think about mobile, one of the biggest winners for mobile was Facebook, because remember, like, people used to just use Facebook on the web. And I mean, I'm dating myself here, but there was a time where like the only way you use Facebook was going to facebook.com, and it was like this giant website, meaning
Mm-hmm.
like lots of tabs everywhere, and then they figured out how to streamline it and just put it in a mobile app. And even though, or because it was so streamlined, people just started using it more. And so it like actually turbocharged their business model, because people started using Facebook so much more in the nooks and crannies of their time. And that, I mean, that's true for like all the social networking sites. So I think there's going to be that dynamic where clearly the big companies that have these AI capabilities, they're going to benefit, but then also startups are going to benefit from being able to include, again, all of these capabilities. And I think there's going to be a lot of SaaS startups whose products were more, let's say you would call them vitamins, not painkillers, maybe like the products were useful, but not strictly required. But with the addition of AI, kind of get pushed over to the top to now where it's like, wow, this is so cool. This is so good. It delivers so much value that like it's going to turbocharge their adoption. So I think we're going to see that. I mean, just like some of the examples I've seen already, like Copilot functionality, where it's like having a power user sitting next to you in the app, like helping you do things because you can just talk to it in natural language. You know, I've seen, for example, demos where using an Excel spreadsheet, it's like you just tell it, hey, give me a formula that does this. You know, only a power user would know how to write that formula because it's literally like writing code. But now a novice can do it because you just describe what you want in natural language. And there's like a zillion examples like that where you can just kind of tell the software what you want it to do and it'll do it for you, you know, or what you guys I think are working on with Copilot, where it'll actually like write code for you, just describe what you want. You just talk to it basically, and it spits out the code that you're looking for, like highly technical code. It's a huge time saver. I mean, another way of describing this, I call it autocomplete for anything, where you can just start something. You could start writing an essay. You could start writing a piece of software. You could, you know, start working on a design for a website, and then you just tell the AI, complete this for me, you know, or you start working on a blog post. And you write the title in the first paragraph and just like autocomplete it. Boom. You're like, whoa. And then, you know, and then you can do human selection on it. You can actually say, give me 5 different versions. And then you click the one that you like the best. And you're like, okay, now take that, give me 5 iterations on that. And just click through 5 generations of human selection. And you can evolve the thing that you're working on to be exactly what you want. Like this is just like scratching the surface, right? And then, you know, the AI gets the benefit of reinforcement learning through that. So next time it's even better. There's so many things, and that's the kind of stuff you can just do today, right? So, you know, it's, you know, it's, you know, the old cliche in the industry is that we overestimate what you can do in 1 year and underestimate what you can do in 10. We're already seeing these capabilities exist today. I mean, when you think about where it's going to go in 5 years or 10 years, as the AI gets even better, you know, and the cycles now, the GPT went from what, 3.5 version 3.5 to 4.0 in like 6 months. And
everything is moving faster. It feels
it's moving even faster. And now you're gonna be able to write code using the AI to make the AI better. I mean, it's like bonkers. But I mean, I think like where it's all going is this is one example, is imagine a Copilot for the CEO, where every single business interaction in the company, every meeting that's like, you know, on Zoom, or every email now, you know, gets, you know, sent to the AI as like training data. And the CEO can just ask it questions. You know, now there's some privacy things to work out, because that's why I say like the CEO, because CEO generally has access to everything. But, you know, like you ask the CEO, like, hey, what are my competitors working on that I'm not thinking about, you know? Or like, what's the biggest problem that we're hearing from customers right now, or the top 5, you know, like look at customer support. And I mean, just like being able to get answers like that. Or like look at every, you know, interaction that our salespeople are having. What are the top 5 objections we get that we're not able to answer, or, you know, whatever. I mean, this is like stuff you can do today, really.
If you can pull all the data in one place. But one of the interesting things is that data lives in, I don't know, 50, 100 different tools today. And some companies say, well, we're going to be the one tool that companies need to use, the ultimate suite. And then we'll be able to train and run AI based on all the data that we have. And other companies are saying, well, we're going to integrate, we're going to connect all the data from all these best of breed tools that you can keep using. And so, it again comes back to this suite versus point solution. And
Yeah.
I think that, uh, for us at SourceGraph, we see dev teams using 70 different tools and all kinds of things to deploy and monitor and observe. And if you want to ask questions like, where's the code that's causing this error in production right now? Well, that alone needs 3 or 4 different tools.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we're betting on this world where there's gonna be a lot of independent tools, and there's gonna be a lot more choice, a lot more dynamism, even a lot more tools built in-house, because it's so much easier for anyone to build tools.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a proliferation. It's not just going to be like one AI that controls everything. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's because I think partly because the AI models need to be trained. And so models that are developed for a specific purpose are going to be better for that purpose than some other sort of generic model. So I think you're going to see a proliferation of different models and applications. And yeah, it's not just going to be one thing. But I do expect, though, that, I mean, this isn't just given the capabilities we're already seeing with conversational AI, like that the AI understands human conversations so well. I do think that, and again, there's privacy issues to work out here, but I think like but I do think a substantial portion of our business meetings and communications will be captured somehow. And I mean, you already see this with like customer support, like call centers, where they tell you they're going to record the call for quality assurance. That's definitely getting fed into the AI, and the AI will just tell you who's doing a good job and who's not, and like what the big problems are and where the company could do better. Same thing with sales, right? There's going to be, you've got like Gong and Chorus. I mean, they're already recording sales calls for quality assurance purposes. I mean, the AI is definitely going to like be involved in that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really, so there's already a substantial amount of this data that exists. And, but there wasn't a lot to do with this data. Like in reality, like no one's got the time to go through like all these recorded calls and, or the transcripts for those calls. Like no human could ever like know what to do with those things. But
the AI previously was used to build new power user features, but now the AI is going to be used to make features that every single user can use, and might be the only feature, the only way to use it, which is a huge change.
Yeah. So yeah, crazy stuff. A lot of interesting things coming, and we're just at the very, very beginning of this cycle. So I think it's really exciting what we're seeing.
Yeah, same here. It's a crazy new world, and it's awesome that it's moving so fast. Well,
yeah, totally.
Thanks, David, for chatting about this, and thanks for being a big SourceGraph supporter.
Yeah, and I'm excited for what you guys are coming out with. So I think it's gonna be amazing. So
yeah, same here.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Quinn. Appreciate it.
Cool. All right, that's it for SourceGraph Starship Talks, all about code intelligence and AI. Please send your feedback and complaints our way. And now, back to coding.